There's a marriage tradition so misunderstood, so deliberately hidden by colonial history books, that even today most people refuse to believe it was real. In southeastern Nigeria, among the Igbo people, women married other women. They paid bride prices. They became husbands. And the children born from these unions carried their names, inherited their wealth, and continued their lineages. But before you jump to conclusions, before your mind fills with modern assumptions about what this means, you need to hear the real story. Because this wasn't about romance. It wasn't about sexuality. And it certainly wasn't what the British colonizers thought when they stumbled upon it and tried desperately to erase it from history. This was about survival, about legacy, about refusing to let your family name die because society said only sons could carry it forward. Where are you watching from today? And how are you doing? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and I love knowing there's a community here ready to explore the deeper truths of African history. When most people hear woman-to-woman marriage, their minds immediately go to modern concepts of same-sex relationships. That's what we know from our contemporary world. But here's the contrarian truth that changes everything. The institution of female husbands in Igbo society was not created to facilitate romantic partnerships or what we'd call gay marriage today. It was a sophisticated social solution to a critical problem: lineage extinction. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the real history of this practice, explain exactly how it worked, reveal why the Igbo created this system, and show you what it tells us about the brilliance of pre-colonial African societies. By the end, you'll understand that this tradition isn't what you think. It's something far more complex and ingenious. Let me take you back to pre-colonial Igboland, before Christianity, before British rule, before anyone told the Igbo people that their customs were wrong. The Igbo society of southeastern Nigeria was patriarchal. Family lineage was traced through men, and inheritance passed along the male line. This was the foundation of their social structure. But life doesn't always cooperate with social structures. What happens when a family has only daughters? What happens when a wealthy woman never marries? What happens when death takes the sons before they can carry on the family name? In many societies, the answer is simple and tragic. The family line dies, the land is lost, the ancestors are forgotten. The Igbo refused to accept that fate. Instead, they created something remarkable. In Igboland, women who were considered exceptional in society due to their wealth or social standing, and those who were past menopause, could marry wives for themselves, for their husbands, for their sons, or for their siblings. These women became what anthropologists call female husbands. They paid full bride prices, just like men. They went through traditional marriage ceremonies, and the women they married became their wives in every social and legal sense. Think about what this means. A wealthy Igbo woman facing the prospect of her family name vanishing could step into the role typically reserved for men. By paying bride price for other women, their status was elevated, and they enjoyed equal privileges with their male counterparts, sometimes even associating with male elders in communal rituals, though with some restrictions. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Woman-to-woman marriage allowed for greater freedom of sexuality for the wives. They could have boyfriends, anonymous men whose only duty was to supply sperm, and this was socially accepted. These men were not husbands. They had no claim to the children. They were simply biological fathers, nothing more. Any children born to the wife belonged to the lineage of the female husband's father, not to the biological father. The female husband remained the sociological father of all resulting offspring. She was provider, protector, decision-maker. The children called her father. The community recognized her authority. What topic about African culture baffles you most? What traditions or practices do you want me to research and explain? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. and I'll make a video addressing exactly what you want to know. Now I can already hear the question forming in your mind. Why? Why would women participate in a system that seems to reinforce the very patriarchy that limited them? This is where we have to be careful not to judge the past by present standards. Children were extremely important in Igbo society. Women who had given birth to 10 or more children were honored with the title Lolo. The overriding goal for woman-woman marriage in Igboland was for women to have children through other women for inheritance purposes. A married woman without a male child, even if she contributed significantly to building her husband's wealth, risked losing everything to her husband's relatives when he passed away. So for a wealthy woman facing childlessness, for a widow whose husband left no sons, for a successful trader or landowner watching her life's work about to be seized by distant male relatives, female husband marriage was not oppression. It was power. It was security. It was the difference between erasure and immortality. These female husbands were regarded as men and influential in society. They participated in secret rituals and enjoyed privileges that elevated them above other women. They weren't pretending to be men or changing their identity. The Igbo simply recognized that social roles could be flexible when family survival was at stake. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to this channel. Your subscription means the world to me. This channel is still young and trying to grow, and every subscriber helps preserve these important stories that mainstream history tried to bury. You're helping keep the truth alive. The practice worked because pre-colonial Nobi society was starkly divided by sex, but its gender system was more flexible, allowing wealthy women to acquire wives and become husbands, and some daughters to be conceptualized as male to inherit their father's position. The fact that biological sex did not always correspond to ideological gender meant that women could play roles usually monopolized by men without stigma. This isn't just fascinating anthropology. This is evidence that African societies had already solved problems that Western feminists are still wrestling with today. The Igbo understood something profound, that rigid gender roles could destroy families, and that pragmatic flexibility served everyone better than ideological purity. But then colonization arrived. The British came with their Christian missionaries, their Victorian sensibilities, and their absolute certainty that they understood marriage better than the primitive Africans. Colonial anthropology created chauvinist stereotypes and tried to erase these customs. Churches preached against female husband marriage. Colonial courts refused to recognize it. And gradually, under intense pressure, the practice began to fade. In Nigeria's current legal framework, same-sex relationships are criminalized. While woman-woman marriage in Igbo culture was never thought of as a homosexual relationship, many considered it taboo for women to sleep with each other. The broader legal climate legitimizes discrimination against any arrangement that deviates from conventional heteronormative marriage. Yet here's what colonization couldn't erase: the memory, the knowledge that for centuries, Igbo women found a way to preserve their legacies, protect their interests, and ensure their families survived. The practice occurred in over 30 African societies, including the Igbo of southeastern Nigeria, the Zulu of southern Africa, and the Nuer of East Africa. Female husband traditions also existed among the Yoruba and in Kenya's Nondi tribe. In a landmark ruling, a Kenyan High Court recognized that, in accordance with Nondi customary law on woman-to-woman marriages, a woman could inherit her late wife's property. The tradition didn't completely die. It transformed, went underground, and continued in places where communities valued their heritage more than colonial approval. What part of this story resonates most with you? Is it the ingenious way Igbo women solved the inheritance problem? The flexibility of gender roles in pre-colonial Africa? Or the way colonization tried to erase this history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear which aspect of this tradition speaks to you and why. Here's what we need to understand. female husband marriage wasn't perfect. Some scholars argue that female husbands in Igboland served more the interest of patriarchy than contended against it, and that the practice reaffirmed the subjugation of women by pitting them against one another based on financial superiority. That's a fair critique. But it's also true that within the constraints of their society, Igbo women found a way to exercise agency, protect their interests, and ensure their legacies survived. They didn't wait for men to change the rules. They used the existing system creatively to serve their needs. This is what African ingenuity looks like. Not perfect solutions, but practical ones. Not revolution, but adaptation. Not destroying the system, but bending it just enough to survive and thrive within it. So here's what we've discovered today. Female husband marriage in Igbo society was a sophisticated social institution where wealthy or influential women married other women, paid bride prices, and became the sociological fathers of children born to their wives. This practice wasn't about sexuality. It was about lineage preservation, inheritance rights, and ensuring family names didn't die out. The children belonged to the female husband's lineage. The wives had freedom to choose biological fathers. The female husbands gained status, authority, and the security of knowing their legacies would continue. And for centuries, this system worked, allowing families to survive that would have otherwise vanished. But colonization brought Victorian morality, Christian condemnation, and legal erasure. The practice faded under pressure, though it never completely disappeared. And today, it stands as evidence that African societies developed complex, flexible social structures long before Europeans arrived to civilize them. The story of Igbo female husbands teaches us that gender roles in Africa were more fluid than colonial anthropology admitted. It shows us that marriage served many purposes beyond romance. And it proves that African women have always found ways to protect their interests, preserve their legacies, and ensure their families survived, no matter what obstacles society placed in their way. If this story touched your spirit like it did mine, subscribe to this channel and help keep these truths alive. Share this with someone who needs to understand that African history is far more complex, brilliant, and innovative than mainstream narratives suggest. Our ancestors' wisdom deserves to be remembered and honored. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Igbo history. Until next time, keep seeking truth, keep honoring wisdom, and keep these stories alive with the respect they deserve.